what exactly is product management?
I mean, it's a lot. PMs do a lot.
What if you're an introvert?
You know what introverts do, the extroverts tend to do later, is think deeply. And when you take the time to think about...
Actually, this is a great pivotal point for us to talk about the million-dollar question. From a PM perspective, what is a good designer?
So a good product designer knows how to talk with people who know nothing about product design. Designers know so much about their craft that sometimes it's tempting to run around clubbing people with your big brains. The problem is that tends to alienate your team and can put people on the defensive because no one wants to feel stupid or uneducated. The trick is to bring your expertise to the table while translating your design language into something a non-designer can understand. It's going to allow you to run around picking up the gems from all of these conversations because there are things to be learned from people with different expertise that can be applied to your design. As you have these conversations, you want to make sure that the communication channel stays open. You've got this well thought out design, you want to defend it, but the trick is to stay loose and calm and receptive and allow people to kind of voice what it is that they're saying. Not everything that they say is going to be actionable or even a good idea, but sometimes you have to just let it be said so that people feel heard. Get people involved early and often. Earlier you get them involved, use artifacts that are really lo-fi. Use process flows, use sketches, because that lets everyone know that you're nowhere near the final. You know, let's say you veer off course and you're really not matching up with some stakeholders' opinion of where we should be going. You can always be like, this is why we have these conversations. This is why we do this early. This is why we're sketching right now. And the earlier and more often you do that, the more gas gets let off. That when you finally show those beautifully architected flows and you're showing everyone what the product's gonna look like, you've already incorporated all their feedback. They're bought in. Those final design reviews will go much smoother.
Designers, take notes. I think this is awesome. Thank you so much, Alexis. These are the things that are not taught in design schools, right? Like I can speak from experience. It is about collaboration. And what that means is you need to look at each other's goals together closely so that you can have a mutual win-win situation.
What you were just saying about how we need to work together, it made me want to say something that I am constantly reminding all the designers that I work with, is that we are essentially two sides of the same coin, right? Like we work in tandem, and I think of my designer as like my #1 partner. And the two of us together are bringing the customer, the business value, and what we're trying to achieve, and then of course the actual vision of what it is that's going to be built. That's coming because we're working together, and it's important that a designer advocates strongly for what it is that they think should be done, and that a product manager listens and figures out how to incorporate those things together. It's a partnership, and it's honestly my favorite partnership that I have on my team.
Okay, it sounds like you had a lot of experiences with designers, with good designers, with bad designers. Can you give us an example with a good designer?
Oh yeah, can I talk about who I work with now? I think that would be like, I have a good story. I work with like a real gem. Li Wei-ge, he's so impressive. And recently, okay, so we just finished a feature and we're a little behind on the next feature because this one took a lot of time. And so now, because I'm behind, I'm like, let's get it out the door, let's get it out the door. We've envisioned this beautiful feature that has all the bells and whistles, but I'm like, okay team, I've set you to stun. It's time to cut this thing into the smallest razor thin slice that we can get out the door and start learning. I'm advocating to take out everything, and Liu is not having it. He used to work at Amazon, and his instincts to deliver satisfying and beautiful customer experiences are well honed, and he's like, we have to have failure notifications in the UI, and I'm like, do we? And so we're in this whole conversation about whether or not we should do that. And he stuck to his guns. He's like, no, we have to tell a user why it failed. Otherwise, why are they going to do it again? Like, they need to have this information. Like, he had really compelling arguments, and we compromised, and we found a way to use the same amount of back-end resourcing by kind of reducing some of our targeting needs for this modal and creating a trigger that will send a failure email. It's that tension that I was talking about earlier, where you're fighting for what you think is right, and you have to have these conversations where you have to say what you think is right. And I think we netted out in a really good place, but I think that's what a designer does. A good designer does, is they push back and they compromise, and that goes back and forth until you finally arrive at something that's like achievable and can be done with the budget that's available.
You mentioned tension earlier. And from my experience, I would say there are so many conflicts, disagreements, tension at any sort of workplace, right? Like, not even tech, but there are a lot in tech. There are some designers who are really afraid of such a situation. How would you encourage them to think about those disagreements in the way that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I'm gonna do a reframe of it, and I'm going to ask the designers to consider this as a sign that they're going in the right direction. So before I go on any further, I do want to make it clear that product managers in particular are often very adversarial. We're hired to fight with the people that are above us, to have a perspective, to push back, and we tend to be kind of bullish because of that. And over time, a product manager learns not to be that way with their team. And so that is something that you might encounter, and it might be with somebody who's kind of earlier in their career, but the more seasoned a PM gets, the better they get at only fighting up and within their team consensus building. So sometimes it's not you, it's them, and they'll learn. They're going to learn.
Love that.
Yeah, but the reframe around it being a sign you're going in the right direction within your team that's building, if you're having these kinds of discussions, it's because people are tuned in. And so then you just have to, I know it's hard, but you have to essentially like push your defenses down a bit and allow that feedback, that critical feedback to flow. And as long as everyone's being respectful and not attacking people, then it's really a fruitful environment in which good compromises can be found. And so I just invite you to think that it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing, and it means you're doing your job.
I love that. This is great. I think this is exactly what designers need to hear. And I would also kind of piggyback on that. A lot of designers take feedback personally. And I know we're creative, this is our work, this is our heart, this is our baby. But guess what? Everyone puts heart and effort and investment in their work. That's their babies too. Why can't they take it non-personally and a designer has to take it personally? I think sometimes we really need to listen and observe what other people handle challenges and try to step outside of our own universe. Oh, actually, everyone's doing that. Everyone's taking feedback. Everyone needs to compromise and negotiate so that we can reach a collaborative goal.
I love that advice. Another thing that I would throw out there is that it's okay to ask your product managers to do more work, because often the thing that helps taper that urge to put the most beautiful thing forward is the justification as to why it is that the compromise makes sense, or how the compromise that you're making now can turn into an iteration later. Ask your PM to explain why it is that they're putting this less impactful, crappy experience in front of a customer, and they should be able to tell you why.
Honestly, at least most of the places I've worked at, everyone wants customers to be happy, right? Everyone wants good customer experience. So if there are times where a designer feels like his or her partners are not trying to strive for it, there might be a reason, most people come from a good place, and if they have to do it, they might not be super happy about it either, but there are other goals that they need to also juggle. And that's something that, designers need to learn as well.
It's a two-way street. We're here to serve the team. I mean, we're nobody's manager.
So we've mentioned soft skills, mindset, And we talked a little bit about how designers can translate, can start the conversations early. If a designer wants to think about active steps to facilitate a good, healthy collaboration, what will your suggestion be?
We have a lot to do, and it's not as though there's a lot of extra time, but one thing that will help you succeed in collaborating with your team is going out and getting more information about what's happening in other product teams to be able to bring forward at the right moment in your meetings. And when you understand what's happening with an adjacent feature team, and you know what they're doing, or you know what experiment is going on over here, or you know the future of some other thing that's being developed in another part of the org, that information can be critical to helping a team make a right decision right now. So if the bandwidth is there, building those relationships and understanding of what these other teams can actually help you work better with your team.
This has been great, Alexis. I bet everyone's like, I want to hear more. Unfortunately, today has to come to an end. But if you have any questions that you want to ask directly to Alexis, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Again, I would recommend you do that in English so that she can understand it and answer it directly. Thank you again, Alexis, for today's conversation.
It's been wonderful. Thank you for taking the time.
Alright, 那今天的边设计边谈就到这边咯，谢谢大家的收看，下次再见，拜拜。